Good afternoon. You are tuning into the remote public scoping meeting for the Resilient Edgemere Initiative, seeker number 21 HPD 009Q. Interpretation services are available for this meeting. Please select Spanish or English from the interpretation button on the bottom toolbar of the Zoom application. My name is Matthew Juliana, and I am the Director of Environmental Planning of the New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development. Lida Al-Jabbar, Director of Resiliency Planning at HPD, will co-host today's meeting. In the event of any technical challenges on my end, Lida will take over this meeting on my behalf. We truly appreciate your patience as we adjust to this remote meeting format and its challenges. Next slide. I want to thank everyone for taking the time out of your day to attend this virtual meeting. I want to acknowledge that technology such as this isn't perfect. However, it is an invaluable tool that allows the critical land use and environmental review processes to proceed while keeping all of us safe during this public health crisis. I also want to emphasize that we will hear from everyone who wishes to speak today, and this meeting will remain open until we have heard from all speakers. We also welcome written comments and testimony through Friday, January 29th, 2021, and provide written comments the same attention and consideration as comments provided live at this meeting. Next slide. We will now proceed to the public scoping meeting for the Resilient Edgemere Initiative. For the record, let me again note that the City Environmental Quality Review, or seeker application number for this project is 21 HPD 009Q. Today's date is January 19th, 2021, and the time is approximately 4:05 p.m. Again, my name is Matthew Juliana, and I'm the Director of Environmental Planning at the Department of Housing Preservation and Development. I'll be chairing today's scoping meeting. HPD is acting as the lead agency for the proposal's environmental review. As lead agency, the department will be responsible for overseeing the preparation and completion of the proposal's environmental impact statement, or EIS. Joining me today are several of my colleagues from HPD. As I mentioned previously, Lida Al-Jabbar, Director of Resiliency Planning, is joining us today. Kevin Paris, Director of HPD's Queens Planning Office, and Jung-Ah Choi, Senior Planner for Queens Planning, are also in attendance. Taylor Goldman, Environmental Planner in HPD's Environmental Planning Unit, is managing this EIS. Eddie Almonte, Neighborhood Planner for HPD, is providing assistance critical to the success of this scoping hearing. Representatives from the environmental consulting firm BHB will be presenting today. BHB has worked extremely hard to assist us with this new format. Many thanks to them. HPD would also like to thank the New York City Department of City Planning for providing thoughtful guidance and insight, which have been pivotal in making this hearing happen in this new format. Next slide. Let's discuss the purpose and format of this meeting. As to purpose, together we are here to receive your comments on the draft scope of work for the Resilient Edgemere Initiative. The draft scope of work identifies the subjects to be analyzed in the upcoming Draft Environmental Impact Statement, or DEIS, and describes the methodologies that will be used in those analyses. I will note that the draft scope of work materials are posted online on the HPD website. The purpose of the public scoping meeting is to allow for public participation in the preparation of the DEIS at the earliest stage possible in the environmental review process. Specifically, scoping allows the public to help shape the DEIS before it is written. Towards that end, HPD, as lead agency, will receive verbal testimony on the draft scope of work from elected officials, government agencies, the local community board, and the public. We also welcome written comments on the draft scope of work, and I'd like to thank those who have already written in. Written comments can be submitted through Friday, January 29th, 2021. At the end of the written comment period, HPD as lead agency will review all comments, those we hear today, as well as all written comments we have received. After carefully reviewing all comments, HPD will factor your comments into what changes, if any, need to be made to the draft scope of work and issue a final scope of work. It is the final scope of work that will serve as the basis for preparing the draft environmental impact statement. Please note that no decisions will be made today regarding the draft scope of work. We are here today to listen. The purpose of the meeting is to allow the public to provide their comments about the draft scope of work and to allow the department to listen to those comments. It's very important for all voices to be heard. Okay, on to format. Today's meeting is going to be divided into 3 parts. My HPD colleagues will make a brief presentation describing the proposal. Next, BHB, the lead environmental consulting firm, will provide a summary of the environmental review's draft scope of work. During the second part of the meeting, the department will hear testimony from elected officials, government agencies, and community board representatives. During the third and final part of the meeting, we will be receiving comments from members of the general public. The meeting will end only after everyone who has signed up to provide testimony has had a chance to be heard. Next slide. On to a few logistics for today's scoping meeting. Again, the protocol is intended to ensure that everyone has had a chance to speak and all voices are heard. If you wish to speak and plan to access this meeting online using a computer, tablet, or smartphone, please register using the instructions you see on screen, and we will add you to our speakers list. When it is your turn to speak, your name will be called and you will be granted temporary speaking privileges by HPD staff. So please listen closely for your name to be called. Once your name has been called, we will help you unmute your microphone and you will be asked to convey your remarks. To allow us to hear from everyone who wishes to speak, we ask you to limit your remarks to 3 minutes. A 3-minute countdown clock will run on the screen if you are participating online. At the 3-minute mark, your time will expire. Please also note that your testimony will be verbal only. We will be able to hear you, but we will not be able to see you. An additional note of instructions for those of you joining us by phone today. If you wish to provide testimony via telephone, please select *9 when prompted. You must press *6 to unmute your telephone, and we will be able to hear you speak live at this meeting. When your testimony is complete or your 3 minutes have expired, whichever comes first, you must press *6 again to mute yourself. We would like to encourage dial-in participants who wish to provide testimony to register via phone using the dial-in participant hotline. Again, muting and unmuting registered speakers may take a moment as we are adjusting to this new meeting format. Thank you for your patience. To those of you viewing us on live stream and wishing to testify, please be mindful of potential background noise during your testimony. Make sure that the live stream is muted when you begin your testimony to avoid hearing an echo. If anyone is viewing today's presentation but does not wish to provide testimony, kindly stream this meeting using the live stream links included within the NYC Engage and City Planning websites, given attendance capacity constraints on Zoom. If you wish to submit written testimony, it may be submitted to HPD. Please email me at julianam@hpd.nyc.gov. That is JULIANAM@hpd.nyc.gov. You can also address postal mail to 100 Gold Street. Next slide. Thank you. And here is our contact information. Again, my email is up on the screen. You can address postal mail to this address, 100 Gold Street, room 7-A3C, New York, New York, 10038. This information is also found on the NYC Engage portal on the Department of City Planning's website and the Department of Housing Preservation and Development's Environmental Review website. We will accept comments through Friday, January 29th, 2021. Next slide. We will now move on to the first part of the meeting. HPD will present an overview of the proposed project. This presentation will be followed by the environmental consultant who will summarize the draft scope of work. If you missed the instructions on how to participate in today's meeting, please visit www.nyc.gov/NYC-engage for instructions on how to participate. At this time, I'd like to hand over the presentation to my colleague, Lida Al-Jabbar, Director of Resiliency Planning at the New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development.
Thank you, Matt. And good afternoon, all. Thank you for attending our EIS scoping hearing today. It is a significant milestone in the Resilient Edgemere Community Initiative, and it marks a major step forward in the implementation of the vision and goals that were established through an extensive community planning effort and ongoing collaboration among residents, community-based organizations, and numerous city agencies. The proposed actions under study are but one element of a comprehensive strategy which seeks to turn the tide on disinvestment and center long-term resiliency in the future of the Edgemere community. Next slide. Today, members of our team at HPD and our lead environmental consultants will present some background on the project. I will first set the stage with a brief background for the work, including the community planning process and an overview of the plan recommendations. My colleague, Kevin Paris, Director of Queens and Staten Island Planning at HPD, will walk through the proposed zoning and land use actions. David Velez, with our lead environmental consultant, VHB, will provide an overview of the environmental analysis before transitioning to the public comment portion of the meeting. Next slide. The proposal today regards the neighborhood of Edgemere, a low-lying waterfront community located in South Queens on the eastern end of the Rockaway Peninsula. The Edgemere Planning Study area is generally bounded by Beach 35th Street to the east, Beach 50th and Beach 51st Streets to the west, the Jamaica Bay water body to the north, and Rockaway Beach Boulevard and Edgemere Avenue to the south, with the boardwalk, beach, and Atlantic Ocean just beyond. Next slide. For just a bit of history, to set some context, at one time a popular vacation destination for city beachgoers, Edgemere and Greater Eastern Rockaway today are shaped by significant events of the 20th century. As vacationers shifted to other destinations, economic activity in the area began to decline. In the urban renewal era of the mid-1900s, extensive tracts of land were cleared, unfortunately, for the construction of large public housing campuses. Between 1970 and the 1990s, many lots within Edgemere were acquired by the City of New York, primarily through NREM foreclosures. The Edgemere Urban Renewal Plan was then created to bring housing, amenities, and infrastructure improvements to the neighborhood. This plan was only partially completed when in 2008, the financial crisis stalled development. In 2012, Superstorm Sandy inflicted severe damage across the neighborhood and peninsula, exposing the vulnerabilities of this community and the broader peninsula to coastal hazards. Next slide. Today, nearly 1/3 of the land area in Edgemere is vacant, with much of that land city-owned. The area is underserved by retail and commercial services, as we also heard in the planning process. And while nearly the entire neighborhood is located within the high-risk floodplain, varying degrees and types of flood risks require a nuanced approach. These events and conditions, along with a growing knowledge of the future impacts of a changing climate, demanded a new model of community development in Edgemere. Next slide. So the Resilient Edgemere community planning process was launched in 2015 with the goals of aligning and leveraging New York City's Sandy recovery investments and inventory of vacant land with a long-term and comprehensive community vision. Addressing the risks of flooding and coastal storms, as well as historic social and economic challenges. And lastly, to promote long-term engagement between the city and the community through community-based planning process. This was an 18-month planning process, which included over 4 workshops, a mail-in survey, and door-to-door outreach. Altogether, this planning process engaged over 400 residents and stakeholders within Edgemere. Next slide. The plan, released in March of 2017, illustrates a long-term vision for the community. This vision includes peeling development back from the vulnerable Bayside edge, opening up waterfront open space, and growing the coastal ecology in doing so. And meanwhile, terracing new development toward transit, filling in the gaps of vacant lots, and creating opportunities for needed retail, commercial spaces, and community facilities. Next slide. The plan sets forth a land use framework, along with a set of goals, strategies, and over 60 distinct projects led by various agencies, which all together can realize this vision. The key goals of the plan are to protect the neighborhood from flooding, create resilient housing and maintain the low density feel, improve streets and transportation, and increase neighborhood amenities. Many of these projects are complete or underway, including Bayswater Park improvements, a reconstructed boardwalk, coastal protection projects that are managed by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and the construction of affordable housing and commercial spaces at Beach Green Dunes 1 and 2. HPD is also currently working to advance another goal of the plan, the establishment of a community land trust within the neighborhood for the purposes of community stewardship and facilitating long-term affordability and resilient land management. The planning framework from the plan suggests general areas for strategies to protect the community at the bayside edge, as shown in green, limit coastal development at the vulnerable area of the community, shown in purple, strengthen resiliency of existing homes and neighborhood facilities, shown in yellow, and lastly, create residential and retail hubs and strengthen mixed-use corridors, shown in orange. It's this planning framework that serves as a blueprint for the proposed zoning and land use actions, which can help to codify this long-term vision and further unlock the aspirations of the plan. Next slide. I'll now turn the presentation over to my colleague, Kevin Paris, to walk through the proposed actions.
Thank you, Lida, for taking us through that
Gracias,
background.
Lida, por mostrarnos ese antecedente o ese historial.
Pardon me for one moment.
Perdóname por un momento.
For those of you listening for translation,
Para aquellos de ustedes
please
que están
intentionally
escuchando
select
traducción, por
English
favor,
from the bottom row
seleccionen
of commands
inglés
to hear
en la
English.
parte inferior para escuchar inglés.
Test 1.
Prueba 1.
Bear with me for one moment.
Quédense conmigo un momento.
Okay, test for translation. Okay. Folks, please bear with us for one moment. We are switching over translators to give our translators a break. We just want to make sure we have this up and running. Kevin, please bear with me for one moment while we get this figured out. For those of you who are seeking the Spanish translation, please select Spanish from the translation options in the bottom row of Zoom. If you'd like to select English only, please select that. And that way you will not hear English and Spanish, you will only hear English. We'll give folks a moment to make that selection. Apologies for the dual language channel. As we said earlier, part of the issues we're dealing with technology, hopefully making for a good meeting momentarily. So we'll give that maybe 30 more seconds. Again, if you are hearing this in two languages, please intentionally select English from the bottom row of Zoom commands under the interpretation button, and then we can go from there. Okay, with that, Kevin, I'm going to start sharing the, pardon me, the content's already shared. I will put myself on mute and you can please proceed. Thank you, and pardon my interruption.
Thanks, production. We just need the slides up. Thank you. Thanks, production. Thank you, Lida, also for taking us through that background, and I appreciate everyone hanging through as we get through those technical mishaps. Next slide, please. Again, so in order for us to achieve the goals and strategies Lida has just discussed, to enact the planning framework created through the Edgemere community process, HPD is seeking approval of the following land use actions within the Edgemere community that cover the full scope of meeting these goals. Zoning map amendments that include both increases and decreases in allowed density, zoning text amendments to the Edgemere Urban Renewal Plan, and an Urban Development Action Area Approval and Designation, commonly referred to as UDAP. Next slide, please. For the zoning map and text amendments, our actions would place limitations on future development in areas of greater risk to coastal hazards and areas susceptible to ponding from rain events. These are donated as the hazard mitigation and limited development zones on the map on the screen. Additionally, our actions will facilitate development in areas appropriate for growth, namely along key transportation thoroughfares that can support increased residential and commercial development. Next slide, please. Within the hazard mitigation zone, the current zoning designation is R41, R4, and C3, and permits a dense building style, a style that can produce up to 3-story homes in either detached or semi-detached buildings. The proposed change from R41, R4 to R3A would reduce the allowable density of new development in these areas, which will reduce future exposure to coastal flooding. The change of C3 to C3A will also limit the types of development in this area, with C3A permitting waterfront activities such as boating and fishing. Its residential equivalent will also fall in line with the proposed R3A district. Common amongst all of these changes you will hear about is the further modification of the zoning regulations in the area through a proposed special district for flood risk. For the hazard mitigation zone, residential development will be limited to single-family detached and will prohibit community facilities with overnight sleeping accommodations. Next slide, please. Immediately south of the hazard mitigation zone is an area currently zoned R4, which permits 1 to 2 family detached and semi-detached residences, as well as multifamily attached, depending on the lot size. Within this limited development zone, we propose an R41 district, which will allow for some future development, but reduce the overall development potential. The proposed special district will limit development to detached only, as well as only single-family detached development of sites whose lot width is less than 25 feet. This district will also prohibit community facility use with overnight sleeping accommodations. Next slide, please. For the area denoted as the mixed-use corridor, these locations are currently zoned R4 as well. Given their location and access to major transportation routes, such as Rockaway Beach Boulevard, we see these areas as key locations to facilitate the development of affordable housing and commercial amenities to benefit the neighborhood. The proposed change to R6A and R6A with a C24 overlay will allow for some mid-rise multifamily development that can include commercial and/or community facilities on the first or second floor. With this increase in density, these locations will also be subject to mandatory inclusionary housing, or commonly known as MIH, which will ensure permanent affordable housing opportunities within any new residential developments. Next slide, please. For a portion of the community, we will also seek to remove some of the existing C12 and C22 commercial overlays to better reflect the existing conditions of these locations. For the C12 overlays, we plan to rezone those to C24, which we expect to better facilitate redevelopment of these sites. Next slide, please. As part of this process and at this time, we are also seeking to amend the current Edgemere Urban Renewal Plan. These amendments will include changes to land use designations, the expansion of the urban renewal area, creating flexibility within the development controls, increase the overall unit cap, ensuring URA disposition authority for all city-owned and acquisition parcels, as well as an extension of the plan's duration. Next slide, please. Now, I would like to turn this over to David, part of our consultant team, to discuss the EIS framework and our draft scope of work.
Thank you, Kevin. Good afternoon. I'm David Velez with VHB, the environmental consulting firm that prepared the draft scope of work and will be preparing the draft EIS on behalf of HPD. Next slide, please. As noted on this slide, the city's environmental quality review process helps decision makers consider discretionary actions by evaluating the potential environmental consequences of those actions. Under SEEKR, a framework for analysis is set forth that compares a future no action condition, meaning the conditions if the proposed actions are not approved, to the with action condition, or the conditions if the proposed actions are approved. This is called the reasonable worst case development scenario, or RWCDS. The draft scope sets forth the analysis areas and the methods for how those analysis areas will be studied. Comments received at this meeting and through the end of the comment period will be incorporated into a final scope, which will guide preparation of the draft EIS. There will be another public hearing after the draft EIS is published. I will provide an overview of the overall EIS framework, which, consistent with SEEKR, will be to analyze the potential increment between the no action and with action conditions under the reasonable worst case development scenario. Next slide. The RWCDS reflects development across 7 multi-family development sites, shown here in red, 2 projected commercial infill sites, shown in purple, and 32 projected residential infill sites, shown in blue. It should be noted that the residential infill sites, which are predominantly vacant or underutilized, could be redeveloped on an as-of-right basis pursuant to existing zoning in the future absent the proposed actions. Next slide. I'll start with the no action condition, which is the future condition without the proposed actions. If the proposed actions are not approved, it is conservatively assumed that existing conditions throughout the area will remain unchanged. While the residential infill sites could be redeveloped on an as-of-right basis, for conservative analysis purposes, the EIS is not taking credit for any development whatsoever on these sites under no action conditions. Therefore, the EIS will assume that the projected development sites would remain vacant. In the with action condition, or the future with the proposed actions, a maximum of approximately 1,200 new dwelling units could be developed, including approximately 456 affordable units. The EIS would analyze an incremental increase of approximately 142,000 square feet of local retail and 387 accessory parking spaces as compared to no action conditions. To be clear, this is a maximum development that is being studied for conservative analysis purposes. This worst case building program would be built out over a period of 10 years and across 41 projected development sites. These numbers do not reflect a specific development proposal for the projected development sites, but have been developed for the purpose of assessing the potential for impact during environmental review. It is possible that some of the commercial area assumed to be local retail for environmental review purposes ultimately could be redeveloped as community facility space. Next slide. Based on this framework, and as detailed in the EAS technical screenings, the draft scope identifies several technical areas for further analysis in the EIS. The EIS will study 17 of the 19 technical areas in detail, including those shown here, which are land use, zoning, and public policy, socioeconomic conditions, community facilities and services, open space, shadows, historic and cultural resources, urban design and visual resources, natural resources, hazardous materials, water and sewer infrastructure, transportation, air quality, greenhouse gas emissions and climate change, noise, public health, neighborhood character, and construction. Next slide, please. The EIS will also include a detailed discussion of mitigation, alternatives, and will include summary chapters. I'll now turn it back to HPD.
Thank you, David. We will now move on to part 2 of the meeting. Before we do, I'd like to remind everyone that today's meeting is being recorded, that there will be an additional amount of time for which people can submit written comments, and that this recording and the recording of this hearing will be posted to the web. On to part 2 of the meeting. At this time, we will be receiving comments from elected officials, community board representatives, and government agencies. Our first speaker is Sonia Moyes, followed by Michael Tuberty.
One moment, please. I'm just going to switch our translators.
Thank you, Alan.
Everyone attending, please pause for a brief moment while I switch over the controls. And for those of you listening, please intentionally select English or Spanish as your preferred language from the bottom row of commands in the Zoom controls, please.
Alan, could you put the slide up with the technical instructions while we wait? There, thank you.
Okay, can we test the Spanish translation, please? All right, I'm hearing English only on my channel, so I do not believe there's crosstalk. Once more, for those of you listening, please intentionally select Spanish or English from the the interpretation icon in the bottom row of Zoom. And with that, I will mute my microphone. And could you please remind me who is the first speaker?
The first speaker is Sonia Moyes, M-O-I-S-E.
Okay. Sonia, the microphone is open and it's ready for you to speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for the presentation today. So I have a couple of questions. Going back to the zoning part, I was a little confused where you said you would prohibit facility use with overnight sleeping. Can you just clarify what you mean by that?
Sonia, I apologize if I was unclear. Today is to provide testimony. We're not answering questions today. We'll be answering all questions in the DEIS once all comments are compiled.
Okay, so I apologize about that. So, well, as far as testimony, going over what was presented in reference to with the zoning changes and the affordable units, I just wanted to state that when you say the affordable units, I don't want it just to be a bunch of apartment buildings because we have that already in the Auburn East project. I would recommend that they will be actual homes to purchase for people, for most of the units to go to those who live in the community. And you also mentioned that the new EIS would, I saw that you included the water and sewer. That's fine, you know, because Rockaway does flood like a lot, but in Edgemere, we have a huge issue when it comes to flooding, and our sewers, they continue to say that, you know, they repair them and everything is working, and it has not worked for years. So, you know, a strong focus needs to be put on flooding within the Edgemere community. And you said you would increase the parking, so that's great. And also just basically is flooding, resiliency, and also opportunities as well for those that live in the neighborhood in the areas of the Rockaway, including Edgemere. We have a lot of uh, um, people who have businesses of their own who would like to embellish on those businesses. So hopefully you can provide that opportunity for them as well within this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. Our next speaker is Michael Tuberty.
Hello.
Hi,
Am I
Michael.
being heard? Am I being
Yes.
heard?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you for this opportunity. I'd like to make a few comments. When we do the with and without actions, why is not the urban renewal plan that exists part of those without actions? Wouldn't that plan, that plan would continue on along? Now, since that plan was implemented, HPD has been accumulating all of those other vacant lots. So they are part of HPD's portfolio. That portfolio in the alternative method could be placed at city auction. Why isn't that part of the without changes? Because without changes, the city owns the property, the city should be selling the property. Without changes, it's an Auburn East area, allowing for the completion of 800 affordable homes for the community, home ownership, versus what we're speaking about now, which is 1,500 units, mostly affordable. Two different types of plans, and they should be compared to, it's, you know, like without the action. I think I'm making that clear. The other point that I would have is that the scope is only dealing with the confined area of 34th to 49th Street from the trestle to the bay. It's not including the impact that the peninsula site with affordable housing going in there, the Far Rockaway downtown site with affordable housing going there, the Edgemere urban renewals, the Arverne East site with affordable housing going there, that effect on that amount of affordable housing in this one area of our community with what we have there as far as our community facilities, one hospital, the schools all have to be studied. The community board will be placing written testimony to this, and most of my comments and concerns would be that way. I didn't think I'd have the opportunity to speak here, and I don't see the time clock for myself, but everything else that I would have to have inputted will come to the community board. Hello?
Hi. Thank you, Michael.
You're quite welcome.
Okay, we will now move on to part 3 of the meeting. This is where HPD will allow members of the general public to speak for up to 3 minutes. I'd like to go through some of the technical assistance that we can provide today. If you need assistance and you're calling into this meeting, callers should hang up the phone and call 646-558-8656. When prompted for a meeting ID, dial 940-4668-6400. When prompted for the password, dial 1. If you did not register to speak using the dial-in hotline, please indicate that you would like to speak by dialing *9. Once your name is announced, remember to dial *6 to unmute yourself. As a reminder, we do encourage dial-in participants who wish to provide testimony to register via phone using the dial-in participant hotline if they are able to. Our first speaker is Eugene Fallick, followed by Sonia Weber-Bay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I'm a member of the board of the Bayswater Civic Association. I was requested to be part of the Resilient Edgemere meetings that were held. I would note that the current Resilient Edgemere project is posted on your website is significantly different than the original Resilient Edgemere report. Furthermore, nothing in the report addresses flooding. The idea that planting grass will affect high tide is absurd. There was and continues to be community opposition that there be no new housing in the area, except 1 and 2 family detached homes, R1 and R2, no R4, no R6. The area roads are currently grossly inadequate for rush hour and summer traffic. The Peninsula Hospital EIS said that there will be significant traffic impacts from the Nassau County line to Beach 116th Street when that project alone is completed, never mind Arverne East and downtown Far Rockaway. We believe, and we, the Bayswater Civic Association, all east-west roads must have 4 traffic lanes, plus parking, plus any bus lanes. All housing must be owner-occupied. We believe that the urban renewal plan should be canceled and withdrawn. HPD actions must comply with the U.S. Fair Housing Act. We believe that current plans are deliberately designed to accentuate segregation in the area. When you talk about underutilized, you're assuming that building a 100-floor building would be appropriate. We do not believe that. The only construction really in the area should be parking for the existing residents. People who live in the housing projects, the NYCHA projects, now have to often walk close to a mile to park their cars. And you're just going to accentuate this problem. So I suggest that you withdraw your plans, that HPD closes up shop and goes out of business. Thank you.
Thank you, Eugene. Our next speaker is Sonia Weber-Bay.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Sonia Weber-Bay. I've been a homeowner in Far Rockaway for over 40 years. I am a member of the Beach 43rd Street Block Association. I have 3 points that I'd like to make about the proposal. The first point is about the 1,201 units that are proposed. I think this is oversaturating the neighborhood. If you estimate 2.2 children in each of those units, there'll be over 2,000 children. And I don't hear any plan for a school or how that's going to impact the schools in the neighborhood. PS 106 is over 100 years old, has less than 250 students. PS 105 is close to capacity, being a K-8 school. I would like you to consider with Auburn East and more children, how those children will be educated. My second point is about recreation, bringing that many additional families into the neighborhood. Where in the plan is places for children to play in these narrow lots where a house will be built, hardly any backyard or front yard. We need to consider places for children to play. My third point is a question really about land trust that was mentioned early on in the presentations. If that is still part of the plan for resilient Edgemere, I do not support that. I feel that families should have an opportunity for full ownership of their homes, including the land on which those homes will be built. And lastly, I think that there should be some consideration for the feel of our Edgemere neighborhood. As a previous speaker mentioned, we value the fact that we are a less dense neighborhood, a waterfront area, and our families and our children and community would like to stay that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. Our next speaker is Anna Palmer. Anna, are you there?
I've sent the command or notification to Anna to unmute her phone, but her microphone is still showing as muted.
Okay, we'll give her another couple seconds.
I no longer see Anna in the meeting.
Okay, Anna seems to be having some technical difficulties, which is this is a good time to note that if speakers do experience technical issues and they're not allowed to speak, we will pause and we will move on to the next speaker to allow for troubleshooting to happen in the background. As of this moment, we don't have further speakers registered, so we will take a 5-minute break. We will wait for members of the public to complete the online registration process. Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the scoping meeting for the Resilient Edgemere Initiative. The speaker number, once again, is 21 HPD 009Q. We just took a short break to allow people to continue to register to speak. If speakers experience technical issues that don't allow them to speak, we will pause and we'll move on to the next speaker to allow for troubleshooting to happen in the background. If you need assistance, please visit the how-to guides on the NYC Engage website, and please see the NYC Engage website for instructions on how to register. Our first speaker will be Anna Palmer, followed by a phone number ending in 466. Anna, if you can unmute your mic, we can begin your testimony.
So Anna's mic is showing as unmuted, but I don't hear Anna. Anna, could you say hello? I'm not sure, Matt. Anna's mic is showing as unmuted. I don't hear any audio coming from her though.
Okay, we'll give her some more time to work out any technical issues on her end. In the meantime, we would like to invite the phone number ending in 466 to begin testifying. And as a reminder, if you're speaking over the telephone, if you're testifying over the telephone, you need to dial *6 to unmute yourself.
Good afternoon. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Hi,
can.
I'm sorry for the technical difficulty.
That's
My
quite
name
all right.
is Anna Palmer. I'm calling from Seager Avenue and Friends Block Association, a community activist, and I live right around the corner from the project that is Auburn East. And I've been speaking to some of the residents in the area, and they have concerns as well with the possible overcrowding. And it isn't so much the people as the resources in the area that's lacking. Because once the buildings are completed on Mott Avenue, those stores and those areas will be inundated with people. So if you're going to build more housing in this area, we need the stores to support it as well. Our block was closed down, which was like the closest little household store. Other stores have also closed down in this area. So it has to be balanced out. Transportation cannot support that many more people. The air quality may be affected. More trees need to be planted in the area to balance off the traffic that will be coming through. So it can be a good project, especially the wildlife preserve, if we get the children involved and make it part of the curriculum of the school, that children can come through the wildlife preserve and gain credit toward their education. And you have to link and balance it out so that people can benefit from it. And then we're also concerned, is that going to drive the price of the rent of this area once that is built up? So then are we going to be priced out and not be able to afford to live in this area? So these are the concerns of the people that I've spoken to in this area. So if you would consider those other things that need to be put in place so that it isn't a problem. Hello?
Hi, Anna. We hear you. You still have 45 seconds.
Oh, I do? Oh, okay. So I think it would be good if there's also any vocational training, because we would like the jobs in the brewery if it's possible, but do we have the knowledge and the training to be a worker in that? So even though if you want to hire the people in this area, do we know how to do that job? Is it going to be on the job training, or do you have to come with the experience? You know, these are all questions. We need vocational training for the adults and, like she said, programs for the children. If we can have a community center so that if there isn't room enough for them to run and play, they can go in the community center. So again, balancing the project out to avoid the problems that's foreseeable.
Thank you, Anna.
And that's what the people need.
Thank you. Okay. At this time, I do not have further speakers registered, so we'd like to give some more time for members of the public to testify. If speakers experience technical issues that don't allow them to speak, we will pause, then move on to the next speaker to allow for troubleshooting to happen in the background, and we will call your name again after we pause. Alan, if you could set the timer for 10 minutes for the break, that would be much appreciated. Good evening and welcome back to the public scoping meeting for the Resilient Edgemere Initiative. For the record, this proposal's seeker number is 21 HPD 009Q. My name is Matthew Juliana, and I am the director of the Environmental Planning Unit at the New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development. We are currently on part 3 of the public scoping meeting, where members of the public can speak for up to 3 minutes. A 3-minute time tracker will start when you begin your testimony. Please remember that after the 3 minutes have passed, a bell will signal the end of your speaking time and you'll be asked to conclude your remarks. As a reminder for those who have dialed in, if you did not register to speak using the dial-in hotline, please indicate that you would like to speak by dialing *9. Once your phone number is announced, please remember to dial *6 to unmute yourself. As a reminder, we do encourage dial-in participants who wish to provide testimony to register via phone using the dial-in participant hotline if they are able to. At this time, we have not had any more members of the public register to testify. We will leave these instructions up on the screen, which will help you register to testify if you would like to, for another 10 minutes until 5:32. If at this time no one else has signed up to testify, we will move ahead to close the public scoping meeting. For those of you who had difficulties providing testimony today, please recall that you can submit written testimony online by selecting this hearing on the upcoming meetings page of the NYC Engage portal at www.nyc.gov/NYC Engage. You can also email myself at julianam@hpd.nyc.gov. That is JULIANAM@hpd.nyc.gov. Once again, you are tuning into the public scoping meeting for the Resilient Edgemere Initiative. This proposal's seeker City Environmental Quality Review number is 21 HPD 009Q. My name is Matthew Juliana, and I am the Director of the Environmental Planning Unit at the New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development. We are currently on part 3 of the public scoping meeting, where members. Good evening. Once again, you are tuning into the remote public scoping meeting for the Resilient Edgemere Initiative. For the record, this proposal's seeker number is 21 HPD 009Q. My name is Matthew Juliana, and I'm the Director of the Environmental Planning Unit at the New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development. We are currently on part 3 of the public scoping meeting, where members of the public can speak for up to 3 minutes. A 3-minute time tracker will start when you begin your testimony. If you wish to speak and plan to access this meeting online using a computer, tablet, or smartphone, please remember to register using the instructions you see on screen, and we will add you to our speakers list. At this time, we have not had any new speakers added to our list in approximately 10 minutes. Okay, if no one else wishes to speak at this time, we will move ahead to close the public scoping meeting. For those of you who had difficulties providing testimony today, please recall that you can submit written testimony online by selecting this hearing on the upcoming meetings page of the NYC Engage portal at www.nyc.gov/NYC Engage. And please note that written testimony can be addressed to myself. My email is julianam@hpd.nyc.gov. That's JULIANAM@hpd.nyc.gov. You can also submit comments via postal mail addressed to myself. The address for HPD is 100 Gold Street, room 7-A3C, New York, New York, 10038. The deadline for submitting written comments is Friday, January 21st, 2021. It is currently 5:33 p.m. and the public scoping meeting is now closed. Thank you.